Welcome to tonight's lecture, Phillipe Rahm. In a 1959 lecture at the Sorbonne called The Evolution of Art Toward the Immaterial, Yves Klein remarked, "Man will never conquer space with rockets, Sputniks, or missiles, because in that way he would remain a tourist in this space, but rather by inhabiting it through sensibility. That is to say, not by figuring in it, but by becoming immersed in it." Klein's air architecture heralded the immaterialization of architecture and proposed geographic nature air-conditioned by using such devices as solar mirrors, heating rivers in winter, creating artificial Gulf streams that cross seas and oceans, as well as changing the direction of great winds from hot countries, directing them toward cold countries and vice versa. The work of tonight's speaker embraces the meteoric sensibility of air architecture. Meteoric in the rare usage of the word, meaning dependent upon atmospheric conditions or weather-related. This work is pertinent to the contemporary architectural discourse in terms of what I would call affective performance, where technology as a means is subsumed by a more extensive set of effects that are generated by it. As the digital paradigm has expanded in scope, moving beyond tools for representation of space to encompass digital modes of design and fabrication in architecture, this coalescence of material and electronic systems begins to reformulate our notions of materiality. This work strives to generate a relational environment that has the capacity to envelop and channel more evanescent forms of matter through its engagement with energetic exchanges and matter in flux. An obsession with the coexistence of tangible matter and more ephemeral substance within architecture becomes evident in the work of Phillipe Rahm. His proposition of thermal asymmetry in architecture and its relation to formal asymmetry exemplifies the hybridization of technological and affective performance. It speculates on how a technologically regulated interior environment can generate a spatial envelope within the physical envelope of a building. These projects privilege sensation over image and speak to the issue of environmental performance. The architecture acts both in terms of its program as well as an environmental filtering device. This kind of multivalent performance goes beyond both the indexical and the sensational by hybridizing these qualities. The meteoric sensibility of Phillipe Rahm is one in which various modes of performance coexist and begin to generate unanticipated architectural effects. As Yves Klein once said, the idea of using pure energy to construct in space no longer seems absurd. Phillipe Rahm is an architect and the principal of Phillipe Rahm Architects, based in Paris. His work, which extends the field of architecture from the physiological to the meteorological, has received an international audience in the context of sustainability. He has represented Switzerland in the Architecture Biennale in Venice, has been nominated for the Ordos Prize in China and the International Chernikov Prize in Moscow. He's participated in a number of exhibitions worldwide, several of which we've been in together at the Max Center and Pratt Manhattan Gallery, as well as he's been in Archilab, SF MoMA, Kitakayushu, Pompidou Center, Manifesta 7, Louisiana Museum, and the Guggenheim. In 2007, he had a solo exhibition at the Canadian Center for Architecture in Montreal. There's a great catalog from that show with the work of Gilles Clement as well, which I would highly recommend. Phillipe was a resident at the Villa Medici in Rome in 2000. He's taught at the AA, the Mendrisio Academy of Architecture, the ETH in Lausanne, the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts in Copenhagen, and at the AHO in Oslo. He currently holds the Jean Labatut Professorship in Princeton. He's lectured widely, including the GSD, Cooper Union, UCLA, ETH Zurich, and he's working on several private and public projects currently in France, Taiwan, Italy, and Germany. His recent work includes the first prize for the 69-hectare Taichung Gateway Park in Taiwan, as well as a 13,000 square meter office building in La Défense, a convective condominium for the IBA in Hamburg, the White Geology, a stage design for contemporary art in the Grand Palais, and a studio house for the artist Dominique Gonzalez-Foerster. Monographs of his work include Physiological Architecture, published by Bierkhäuser, Distortions, published by HYX, Environment Approaches for Tomorrow, published by Skira, the book I mentioned, and Architecture Meteorologique, published by Archibooks in 2009. It's with great pleasure that we welcome Phillipe Rahm tonight to SCI-Arc. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation and for this complete presentation. I will present my work today focusing on the question of atmosphere, and I will start with a recent project we have won in October 2011. And we have just signed the contract 3 weeks ago. It is for a huge park in Taiwan, the Gateway Park in Taichung. And I want to do a kind of complete presentation of this project. And you will see it's all about atmosphere design. So atmosphere design as heat design, humidity design, as moisture design, pollution design. And after the presentation of this project, I will come back to some older project to show what it is. Just have to switch off this. Okay, I will come back to older project to show from where all this idea come. Maybe first, I have to say that the question of the atmosphere for me is completely linked to architecture. It's not a new idea. It's, I think it's really the issue, the main issue of architecture. It is really to define the void, to define the air, to define a certain pocket of climate, and to give some quality to this pocket of climate. And this quality, of course, is linked to heat, it's linked to moisture, it's linked to chemical quality, it's electromagnetic wavelengths, is a light, is all these things. And I think it's really the most important element of architecture, and what there is around this void is maybe less important. And in the history of architecture, of course, we have focus on the visible element, on the wall that contain, on all the solids that contain the void. But in fact, the most important element of architecture is not the container of the void, it's really the void itself, the space itself. And if there is not a long history of this void, it's maybe because during a long time we don't know what it was, this void. It's only, it starts in the 17th century that we understand that the void is not empty, that there is a certain physical quality. With Lavoisier, we could compress like a balloon the air until a certain moment, and after you could no more. And after in the 18th century, we understand that it's not one element like it was in the old Greek physics. We understand that air is not an element, it's composed by different gas like oxygen, like nitrogen and other gas. And in the 19th century we understand that it's not, there is also a biological value inside, there is some bacteria that are inside the air. So, and now we know also that there is a lot of wavelengths of electromagnetic field inside the air. And so it means that this void is no more empty, it's a kind of soft solid, and we are swimming inside. And maybe we could start to design it as the main element of architecture. And so for this project, it was for a park in Taiwan. And when I start to think about this project, I was asking myself why we need to do a park. And And I read some old book about the urban park of the 19th century, like Alphand in Paris with Haussmann, or like Olmsted in New York with Central Park. And when you read this writing from this landscape designer, you understand that it was not really a romantic idea to bring the nature into the city. It was more a question of hygiene, of health, to bring, to clean the air. And when you read, for example, why Alphand introduced some trees in the boulevard in Paris, it's only to create shadow during the summer when you walk, and because all the street is built in stone, and so it's become very warm during the summer. But the tree create a shadow, so you could walk, and also the horses could walk under this shadow. And so there is absolutely no idea of romantic idea of the trees. It's just a device to create shadow. And in the same idea, the fountain in the park is not an aesthetic object. It's just you understand it clearly in Spain or in Morocco. It's just a device that spreads some drop of water in the air. And so this drop of water have a lot of surface in contact with the air. So there is a most important evaporation phenomena. And when there is a change, this physical change from liquid to gas, it takes some energy from the environment, so it cools the temperature around this space. So a fountain is a machine to reduce the temperature of the air. And so the grotto and all the elements of the park could be understood then like element to change the climate, to bring some cool quality, or to some more dry quality when it's too warm or too humid. So we take the same idea also because when I spoke with some people from Taiwan, they say they never go into the park, they prefer to go in shopping mall. They think that the park is too warm, and also they say that there is too many mosquitoes, too humid, so they don't like to go in the park. And this idea to work directly on the atmosphere, to say that the park will be a work on the climate, become for us the most important issue of the project. So we separate the work on the atmosphere on the 3 layers. The first was the heat layers, and after the humidity layer and the pollution layer. And because Taiwan is a warm country, it's a subtropical climate, and very often the summer is very long, and it's not so easy to go outside during these long months of summer, and so we just look to some data, for example, in Taichung, and we could see that in July is when it's very red here. It's too warm, so it's better to be in November. So it's a little the idea to take November climate and to bring it to July, and to do it, we analyze from where comes the wind in the site in Taichung, and this is a wind map, and we could say, okay, maybe where it's very warm, we could have a building. Where it's less warm, we could be outside. So we could map a little the function linked to the climatic condition. So we designed this first map. So we analyzed, because there is some cold winds that come in from the north during the summer. So we map from where this cold wind arrive, and it becomes the most colder area in the park. So this is the white area here. It's come from the street, from the north, and there is a wind that come a little from north and northeast. And we could see that we map this, and we say the white could be potentially the most colder area in the park. And we don't work with edge, we don't work with line, we just work with a gradation of from the white to the red, so from the most colder area in the park to the most warmer area in the park. And so where it's white here, we introduce, because it's already a little more cold than the red area, so we introduce a lot of climatic devices. So I will show it after, but we introduce a lot of elements that could reduce more and more the temperature inside. So it means that where it's white, where it's already a little cold, it becomes colder, and when it's red, when it's warm, we let it warm in the park. So this is a kind of impressionist composition. It's not, where it's very white, we introduce 100% of devices. When it's a little more pink, we introduce 60%, and when it's white, when it's red, we introduce 10 or 20% of devices inside. And to do it, to define these climatic devices, we do a complete list, like a dictionary of all the elements that could reduce the heat that we know. So it could be natural devices, like trees with big leaf, for example. It could be parasol, an umbrella, or it could be some very sophisticated machine. It could be a fan. It could be also to drink, or it could be a fountain. So we do a complete catalog of this, and it becomes a kind of a climatic dictionary of all the elements that could reduce. That could be one point in the park to reduce the temperature. Around it. So this is a list like of all the techniques. There is absolutely no hierarchy. So we don't. There is just a money hierarchy, because we have 90% of trees and 10% of machine. Just also linked to the quantity of money we have to introduce it in the park. And so there is some very small element, and some other are become bigger. And there is some very traditional one, and some more sophisticated one. And for example, I could just show just a tree with a very big leaf that create a big shadow, and so it will be more cold under. Or this core cooled surface, so there is a fluid that go underground, and it's cool underground, and after there is a cold radiation. Or like this, or it could be just a fan, or it could be a geothermal well, so the air, it's like the Palladio technique, or Puits Canadien, so the air going underground, and it's cool, because underground it's always 12 degrees Celsius, and after it's below, and it's more cold. So this is a complete catalog of all these elements, and after we introduce all these elements into the park, and we design a first map of, so all the point is one climatic devices, and where it's become very dense, it's become very cold, and a lot of elements, and it become a kind of forest, but it's not a natural forest, it's composed by trees, by machine, by different, all these elements that come from the dictionary. And so we have a first map in the park. We could see here this is this red one. So where there is a lot of red one, it's become more cold. So this is this impressionist composition. And here we could see, for example, we have trees, an evaporating pad cooling, a core cooled surface, an artificial fog, and trees. And so it's just a random position of all these elements, depending of the gradation of the level of coldness we are looking for. So this is some section. I'll show it. So we did the same for the moisture in the air, because it's also very wet and it's not so comfortable, because when it's wet, you could no more use the thermolysis phenomena of the body, because when it's warm, to cool the body have a perspiration phenomena that there is some water that go out from the skin, and when there is this evaporation phenomena like the fontaine, so it's cool around the skin, and so it becomes more cold around the body. But when it's already wet, you could no more use this strategy, because the air is already saturated by moisture. So maybe it's better to reduce the humidity of the air. And of course, they say in November it's more comfortable than during the summer. So this is a little the idea, to take the humidity level of November and to bring it in the summer. Or this is to reduce, to fall down from this. From the high level of humidity to a more low level of relative humidity in the air. So to do this, we work with a landscape designer, Catherine Mosbar, and to map the hill and the lake. No, it's not really lake, it's just because we have to manage all the water rain from the new area, and so all the rain will arrive on the site. So sometime it will be, the park will receive a lot of water, and some area will become some lake, and so we have to manage this amount of water that arrive on the park. And so we fix some part where it will be, when there is a rain, it will become, the rain could stay in some lake. And where it's far from this lake, because it will be the most here in the white area, it will be the most dry part of the park. So we could see that when it's far from the lake, from the empty space where there is no rain, so this is this area that are the most, potentially the most dry in the park. So where it's very far, we introduce a lot of points, and where it's less far, so it's also a gradation. And it creates a map too, and we did the same. So it's a complete dictionary of all the techniques to reduce the humidity of the air. So it's a lot of machine of ionic dehumidifier, or it could be also some trees. There is some trees that absorb the humidity of the air. There is some material also that absorb, like the silica gel or like the clay. There is some machine, a lot of machine that absorb the humidity of the air, and the wood. So this is some different devices against humidity in the air. And we create the second layer, the second map of all these points. One point is devices against the humidity of the air, and it creates a second map. And you could see now the two maps, all the devices against heat and the devices against humidity, that create two layers with different shape and different position in the park. And the last layer is a pollution layer. So you could see Taiwan, of course, this area, the west area is more polluted, and Taichung is, there is this to the west, a more clean area. And when we map the pollution in Taichung, the park is here. And this is a little the idea to have a more or less polluted park, to introduce a less polluted area into the park, and to reduce, this is some pollution, different polluant in Taichung. So this is a little, for example, in April, there is less this pollution, so this is to bring it and to enlarge it for all the year long. And to do it, we just follow the street around the park. So there is and we say that the pollution, it will be more polluted near the street than far from the street. So where it's black, it is a most polluted area, and when it's white, it's a less polluted area. And so it creates a second map. And where it's white, so we introduce a lot of devices against pollution. And so this is the new map. And we did also a dictionary of all the techniques to reduce pollution. So it could be some trees that absorb different polluant. It could be some material like photocatalytic concrete, or like some different machine. And also we integrate into pollution, we integrate the idea of sound and mosquito into it. And this is some trees or some material, or this reverse waves against noise, or this ultrasonic mosquito machine. And so we introduce them into like another map. So here it's trees against pollution, and acoustic surface, and carbon filter, noise cancellation. So it creates another map. And so these three maps this overlap, and so the project, the final Taichung Getaway Park design, is this overlapping of the heat map, the humidity map, and the pollution map. And all together, it's, we don't want to create, we don't believe in this modern idea that we have. We want to create the most comfortable area. We think that we could also create some uncomfortable area, because maybe something uncomfortable could be in winter comfortable, or in the end of the afternoon it could become comfortable. So, and also maybe someone want to be in an uncomfortable area. So we like this idea that everybody has the freedom to choose where he want to be, and it's not the architect that decide everything and decide what will be the most comfortable place. But by overlapping these these three maps, we create different climatic situation. So here, for example, it's cool, humid, and polluted. Here it's cool, humid, clean. Here it's cool, dry, polluted. Here it's cool, humid, polluted. So it's create a variation of situation that could be used at different moments of the day, and create a variety of climate. And following this, we introduce a program following the climate. So where it's polluted, where it's less cold, more cold, we introduce all the leisure program, like a chess table, or a picnic table, or chair to read books. And so it go a different place where there is a lot of red point, and where it's very warm, we introduce the indoor program. The building go where it's less comfortable, like the new tower. That it was a competition 3 months after Earth, and Su Fujimoto, the Japanese architect, win this competition. So this Taiwan Tower will be situated here, in this warm area. And the sport program go where there is a low relative humidity area, because we have a better perspiration where it's more dry. So like a baseball field or baseball go in this dry area here, and so we introduce them here and here. And so all the program find a place in the park following the climate, and the children go in the low polluted area, like here or here. And after we have some polluted program, and we create 3 roads that kind of isobar road that connect all these different. This is the most dry road, the most cold road, and the most clean road here. So now I would like to show some other work, more older, about different climatic or meteorological elements. And the first is this heat design, and it starts in 2008 when I was invited by Aaron Betsky for the Biennale in Venice. And here, maybe it's interesting, this discussion about Yves Klein or this 60s air architecture, because I think the reason of my interest and the interest today for air and climate is completely reverse than the Yves Klein period, because the Yves Klein period was, at this moment, it was the phase that energy is endless with the nuclear power, and during the 60s. And all this architecture was linked to this idea that there is no border for the energy. And so we could no more have a roof, we could just blow some air, and that it will cut the rain. And so, all this idea fall down, collapse in the 1974 when there is an oil crisis, and the architecture changed completely because we could no more expand the energy as we want. And today we are completely in the opposite movement, so we have to control completely the space. We have to enclose the space with a big insulation to calculate the exact amount of air that we will introduce to not warm an excess of air if it is cold outside. So we are completely in the opposite position, but this position also change or focus the element of architecture on the climatic element. And so maybe there is some crossing interest, but it's completely come from a different position. So here in this work, I try to integrate the idea of sustainability and some energy recommendation, like Swiss recommendation to economize the energy, to fight the global warming, and to reduce the green gas effect. And today, because we could not switch directly to renewable energy, we have to reduce the quantity of energy that we use, because a lot of energy comes from the fossil energies that create green gas. And one recommendation, it is to reduce the energy used in the space. And in Switzerland, they say, for example, that the corridor could be warm at 15 degrees Celsius, and not 20. 20, it is the basic. 21 is the normal temperature. but 15 because you walk in the corridor, you don't spend a lot of time in the corridor, so you don't have time to become cold during the winter. I speak from a Swiss point of view, but for maybe a Los Angeles point of view, it could be exactly the opposite. Because it's not too warm, but it's too cool. But this is the same. This is the same position. So the corridor, you could keep it as it is, at 15 degrees Celsius, and the bedroom at 16 degrees Celsius because you are inside the bed, you are protected inside the bed. The kitchen at 18 degrees Celsius, a little more warm because you are cooking and moving, and so you produce your own energy by walking. Living room, you don't move in the sofa, so 20 is good, and bathroom, you are naked, so 22. So this is some Swiss recommendation. It's not my recommendation. It's just an idea to economize a lot of energy. Because if you warm all the bedroom in Europe at 16 degrees Celsius and not at 20, you economize 4 degrees Celsius multiplied by the number of bedrooms. So at the end, it becomes a very big amount of energy that you could economize. But if you look to this from an architectural point of view, you understand that you could no more have a plan libre of Le Corbusier or open plan of Mies van der Rohe because you need to have a door between the bathroom and the corridor, for example, because if you let the door open between the bathroom at 22 degrees Celsius and the corridor at 15 degrees Celsius, after 5 minutes it will be 18 everywhere and it will become too cold for the bathroom, so you will turn the radiator up and it will be 22 in the bathroom, but also in the corridor. So it means that if you follow this recommendation, you lose all the space quality of the 20th century and you come back to the 19th century room with door and you have to close the door and to have separate space between all the functions. So this is maybe a problem because we want to go beyond or forward and we don't want to go back to the 19th century. So this is one point, but in the same time you cannot refuse it because of course it's a citizen position and it's interesting to reduce the energy consumed in the building. The second element, it is this, the Archimedes law. This is the law that the warm air go up and the cold air fall down. And very often it's very warm under the ceiling because it's cold. You are 18 degrees Celsius or 16 degrees Celsius on the foot and you are cold on the foot, so you turn on the radiator, but the temperature always go up under the ceiling, so it becomes more and more warm under the ceiling and it's still cold because it is a natural law. You could not change this natural law. And this is this stratification between blue down where it's cold and warm, red where it's warm. And what we want, because nobody live there, so we lose a lot of energy there because it could be after my head, it could be a minus 0 degree, it's okay because nobody lives there. So what we want to reverse the situation. So what we have, this is this curve, so it's cold on the foot and very warm under the ceiling, but here it's just a loss of energy because nobody uses this temperature there. And what we want, this is the opposite curve. So we want a completely anti-naturalistic curve. We want the opposite of what the nature creates by itself. We want more something more warm, maybe on the foot at 20 here, and after the head, it could become very cold there. So what we did for the Venice Biennale, we just built this thermodynamic imbalance. So we propose, normally we have the red here and the blue here, and we propose to create an imbalance to go down with heat, with a warm area, and to go up with a cold. And so this is two radiators this is a warm radiator. This is another warm radiator, but more cold. And by changing the position, we create a flow, a kind of Gulf Stream. It's a movement of convection. The warm air go up and touch the cold surface here and fall down. And it creates a flow like a little like the Gulf Stream with the salt. So there is this, it go up and down, and it creates a flow of air, a small wind into the space. This is some section here. And there is also some curve, some shapes that appear, and also some different space. We could see that here, because here it was 26 degrees Celsius, and here it was 15 degrees Celsius. So here it's 25, 22, here it's 20 degrees Celsius, here it will be 18. So it generates some space with different quality in the space. So for the Biennale, it was just very simple. It was these two radiators that was placed in the space. And the idea is to build this ideal curve that I showed before. So it's more warm down and more cold up. It creates a completely unnatural situation. And there is this flow of air that starts to move. And it generates in between different zones with different quality of temperature. So it was really simple during the Biennale. Just these two radiators. And this is some image. And of course, it was a little like this place was a kind of summer, and here it was a kind of winter, or here it's a kind of north part of it's Alaska, and here it's more Mexico, something like. Or it could be here, it's more the bathroom, and here it's more the corridor. So it creates these two pole of different temperature, and it generates in between a different quality of space inside. So here you could stay naked, and here you have a small jacket, and after you have a bigger jacket. So it creates a gradation of temperature into the space. And following this idea, the French artist Dominique Gonzalez-Foerster asked us to design a house and studio for her. And we start by introducing these two radiators. But we keep what we did. We choose the Swiss recommendation. So we take the maximum of heat at 22 degrees Celsius, like the bathroom for the Swiss recommendation, and the minimum of temperature, the 15 degrees Celsius, like a corridor. And this is a section. We introduce it, and we create this imbalance, and it generates this landscape of heat in the section, in the volume. And we could see that here it's 22, here it will be 22 degrees Celsius, here it's 19 degrees Celsius, 16. And following this temperature, we introduce the furniture inside. So where it's 22, we introduce the bathtub, where it's 20, the sofa, where it's 16, the bed, where it's 18, the kitchen. And so the function follow the map of heat generated by this imbalance of heating system inside the volume. And after we connect these different furniture objects with some floor that need to have some empty hole everywhere to let the flow of air moving everywhere. And at the end, we have this image with this empty hole and this floor that lets the air moving everywhere. And as I say at the beginning, that if we follow the Swiss recommendation, we could no more have an open plan because we need to close the door. Here we could see that we don't need to close the door. We could keep the door open. And here it will be 22, and here it will be 16. But without closing the door at the space, we could keep different quality of temperature. So it's a kind of synthesis of the 19th century, the 20th century quality of space, of open space, and the 21st century sustainable goals that are together and create this kind of space. We just produce in the same idea, but without the movement of convection, just by introducing the warm air go up and the cold air go down for an exhibition in the Louisiana Museum in Copenhagen. It's just the warm air go up under the ceiling, and the cold air is down. And so we analyze, we produce in real time with this radiator, we produce the heat, and the heat go up, go under the ceiling, and we introduce the bathtub there, the bed in the more colder area, and the living room in between, the toilet here. And we have this image of a contemporary apartment that it's a kind of the normal of temperature. It's to optimize. So where it's 22, we have the bathtub. Where it's so we don't anymore live on 2D. We live on the atmosphere itself, and we look for different quality of temperature inside the space to place the object and to live there. And we just it's finished in 1-2 weeks, an apartment in France based on the same idea. It just the furniture changed position and go the bench with where there is maybe 2 or 3 people together. So there is a kind of human temperature sharing. So it's here, and when you are alone in your fauteuil, it go upper in the most warm layer of the air inside the space, and also the shower go up and the kitchen go down. So there is a kind of variation. I don't know if you see something. It's very white, but so here we have the different sofas that go at different positions in the air. No, we see nothing. So, okay. And some other work also based on this convective movement, a project for a museum in Poland, where we introduce also 2 sources of heat, one warm and one more colder sources. And where it's more cold, it will be the storage. Where it's more warm, it will be the office. And we introduce at the low level, at this level, at the ground level, this is a the cold source, the warm source of heat. So where it's red, it will be space where people stay during long hours. So it's the office space. Where it's green, it will be the exhibition space where you walk. And where it's blue, it is a storage space or the toilet space. And so it changed because the warm air go up and the cold air go down. It changed. Each level is different. So the office space becomes bigger and bigger. The storage space becomes smaller and smaller when you go up in the altitude. And the exhibition room space, it is, for example, here it is the space of the exhibition, and here it changes, it goes there. So at each level it changes, and here we have some image of this museum with all these different this variation of the program that follows the climate, and of course there is some hole everywhere. We could see at the top to let the air moving everywhere in the museum. And another project here, it's also a kind of landscape of the slab, of the concrete slab, that change the position following the program. So it goes up when it's more warm, and it goes down to the colder area. And so it goes down to the bedroom and go up to the bathroom. And so we have some image. And all the idea is to economize the energy, because we don't lose the heat go up under the ceiling, so we go up also with the bathroom, and we go down to the. So it's the idea is to economize and not to warm more and more, but to stay in a normal of temperature in between, and to change the position of the slab following the different requests of heat. And just another project, it was for a art school, and it was linked about how to produce studio for artists, and we don't know what kind of light they need and what kind of temperatures they need. For example, if you are a Swiss watchmaker, you need a very strong light and a very warm place, because you don't move, you are very precise on the table to work with a bright light. But if you are a 19th century painter, you need a north light, and if you are a video maker, you need a black room, and if you are a sculptor, you need a cold room, because you do some sport, and so you could warm it only at 14 degrees and not at 20 degrees. So we don't know exactly what kind of art climate need an artist, and maybe the artist itself don't know what he want. Sometimes it's completely absurd, because I was, for example, in a house for artists in Japan, and it was only north light, because he thinks every artist have to need some art painter and need some north light from the north. And so here the idea is to create also with two layers, to work on the layer of light and the layer of heat, and to create a kind of a ring of 4 different conditions. So this is here very bright light. Here it's a little darker and very dark. And by changing the position of the ground, of the floor, here it's more cold, and it becomes more warm and very warm and very warm. So at the end, we have 4 situations of light and 4 situations of heat. So here it could be it's warm and dark, and here it's warm and light, and here it's cold. And so there is different variation of climate, and you could choose where you want to be, following the kind of art you want to do, or if you have no idea, you could just stay in one room. And this is some image of the project, of this atelier. And the slab just changed the position following the heat. So it's, of course, it's more warm there and more cold here, and here it's in between. And just a last project on this, it was for a library, and also it's in the library, you are of course place where you spend time to read book, and you have also some storage of book, so there is no need to warm the storage, and so we create a landscape where we have the book, the storage of the book there, and the consultation, the work area here. And we also work on the air ventilation. So when you bring some new air, of course you need, for example, 5,000 square cubic meter by an hour for space where there is a lot of people. But for the book, there is not a lot of people, so you could change the air only 600 cubic meter by hour. So here we just introduce the new air there, and the air, and by a natural movement of air, so it will be less less ventilated air and more ventilated air. So we don't introduce room and separation and wall. We just work directly with the meteorological phenomena to create different pockets and different zones at different temperature and different air ventilation inside the. Okay, and I want so this is some project linked with heat design. So it was one of the elements of the park, and the other element is the moisture, is humidity. And just I want to show only two projects on how the moisture could be a tool for designing architecture. We take directly the moisture the basic element of the design, and as I say, it's come from this new sustainability idea. We need a very big insulated envelope. It could be 40 centimeters of insulation now in Switzerland, and of course it must be airproof. So because we don't, the air have to be completely separate from outside and inside. And because it's completely separate, inside you have no more oxygen, and when you breathe, you lose a lot of vapor. And so this is this new system. I'm sure everybody knows this soft double flux air renewal. So it's you take the new air and it go in the indoor space, and after it go out, and before going out, there is a metallic plate that with heat exchanger. So you could control exactly the quantity of air. If there is one guy here, he need maybe 7 liters for 1 minute of air. So you could bring only 7 liters of air for 1 minute, and see if there are two, you could control and bring only 14 liters for 1 minute. So it means that you could you could economize. Because if it's very cold outside, you will not warm air that you don't need for the ventilation. You don't need for the breath. So this is the system of this double flow. So you have the cold air that go down, and there is this metallic plate exchange, and the warm air go inside the space. And the first reason of the ventilation, it is because when we breathe, we produce a flow. We have a lot of water that go on the air, and we produce a lot of, if it is 14% of humidity, of relative humidity in the air, when you blow, you have 90% of relative humidity. It's why you see a cloud when it's very cold outside. And this is the first reason, because when you blow, you add more and more moisture in the air, and at one moment the air could no more accept this moisture, and there is a condensation phenomena, and it could create mushroom, or it could, of course, you need to change this air. So this is the first reason why there is ventilation. The second reason, it is for the oxygen, and to bring some new oxygen, and after it is the odor. And there is something very interesting in this sustainability idea, that you don't need to change the air. You need to, according the quantity of air you change, according to the activity you have inside the space. So if you sleep, you produce only 40 grams of humidity for 1 hour. If you are in a normal position, you produce 150 grams in 1 hour. If you use a kitchen, you cook and you produce a vapor. So it could be 500 grams in 20 minutes. And if you take a shower, it could be 80 grams in 20 minutes. And this is interesting because it creates a kind of new type of new typology of house. If it is, for example, used for an apartment or for a house, you need to introduce the new air in the most dry area. So it is a bedroom where you produce less air, less vapor by breathing. And after it go to the living room, and after it go to the kitchen, or it go to the bathroom or to the toilet. And of course, you don't need, and after it go out from the house. And it creates a kind of invisible wind inside the space, inside the house. And you understand easily that you don't have to bring the new air in the kitchen, because the odor of the kitchen will go, if it is arrived here, it will go in the bedroom, or not in the bathroom, because you have the humidity of the bath that will come back in the living room, and so the moisture will go everywhere. Or in the toilet, you have the odor of the toilet that will go in the bedroom. So there is one arrow from the dry area to the most dry area of the apartment. The air have to go to the most humid area. So it's interesting because it changes the typology of the house, and if it's no more to say you produce the house by introducing a type like a private and public, or like day and night. Here it's dry and wet. And of course it's strange because the bedroom is separate from the bathroom by the living room. So it's a new type that appears, and we could accept it today by just accepting that this is linked to a more sustainable plan of the house. And if you look to the history of architecture, you could see that the idea to have different space with different function is a recent idea. It came from the bourgeoisie of the 19th century with the invention of the corridor, and where you have different space with different function, like a bathroom, a bedroom, or living room, but before it was not like this, and in the old house there is only one space, and the fire generate different gradation of heat, and near the fireplace it was a kitchen, but it was also the living room in the countryside house, and also the bedroom for the old people. So. And also in the Arabic countries, there is a house without function. The function changed during the day, so it become a living room during the night, but it's no more during the day. So here it's dry area, and here it's more humid, and here it's very humid. And we introduce a function following this map. So the bedroom are here. This is and the living room are in between, and the kitchen are here, and the bathroom are here, and the bathtub are here. So there is a kind of, without introducing door and wall, we accept to have this migration of vapor inside the house that generate the new map, the new plan of the house. And I just... So here it's an image, and also, so it become a kind of desert inside the house. It's a kind of jungle inside the house. And also there is this movement of the slab, because when the air is more humid, it become more light, and the dry air is more heavy. So it's why you have also always an exit of the air at the top under the ceiling, and not on the floor level, because the humid air go up, and so you could start to design also the form of the building following this the weight of the air, depending if it is humid or dry. And the last project, it is a relocated barn, and it's an analysis of the question of humidity inside the house, linked to maybe the changing moment between modernity and post-modernity. And maybe this moment starts with Gaston Bachelard in the 1958, and after with Aldo Rossi during the 60s, 70s, and with Jane Jacobs, where there is this critique of the modernity. And if you read Gaston Bachelard in The Poetic of Space, it is a critique of the modern apartment. He says that the modern apartment is a horizontal apartment, and he says that before it is an horizontal organization of the space, and before it was a vertical organization, and it was stretched between the attic and the cellar, and he said it was a kind of psychological vision of the human mind between the cleverness and the intelligence and the light in the attic and the mysterious and the crime in the cellar. And for him, modernity destroys this old psychology of the house by erasing the attic and the cellar, and just creating a kind of, by reversing this vertical organization to an horizontal organization. But in the house before, this organization between cellar and attic was also linked. It was not only an abstract psychological idea, it was also linked with a gradation of humidity inside the space. So it was very humid in the cellar and very dry on the attic. And some function was linked to this because the house is also the place to keep food or to store some different product. So in the cellar you keep some different vegetable or the wine, and you don't know if the wine invents the cellar or if in the cellar invents the wine. And after you go up in the space, you go up in the level, in the different floor, and you arrive in the attic, where you could have a dry plant in the space. And so you could do a map of this. So this is a relative humidity, this is the temperature, and here this is the cellar, here this is a bathroom, or here this is a kitchen, and here this is a ham, this is the attic. And so you could you could map between a low relative humidity, where you are corn and rice and clothes, to middle relative humidity, where you have the sofa, furniture, orange, and to the high relative humidity, where you have wine and the cellar and apple. And what's happened during the modernity? The attic disappeared and the cellar disappeared, and of course it was an economical reason, but it was also the invention of the fridge, because the cellar go into the fridge and the attic go into a pantry or into a cupboard, and it become two objects that go inside the space. So we destroy this attic, we keep a kind of in-between humidity space. We lose the high dry area and the high humid area of the space, and we have an homogeneous modern space, horizontal space. But today, because this modern space doesn't deal with the humidity level of the space, and as I just showed, by introducing this new technique of air ventilation, air renewal with double flow, with heat recuperation, we could maybe reintroduce an idea of humidity inside the space. So, and there is with this technique, there is a new position of vapor. It's no more a modern apartment with a kind of normal of humidity in the air. It's again a difference between dry area and wet area. And here the idea is to reverse from the vertical bachelor organization. We go to this modern flat horizontal organization, and we reverse the house. And this is a little the idea to reverse the two pole of high relative humidity and low relative humidity to stretch to the plane. This is the source of the new air, where it's more dry, and this is the exhaust air area. And so it creates geography where it's a kind of desert or dry area or attic to the most humid area or kind of jungle or cellar here. And we could introduce all the different elements of the house inside. So there is a ham or rice and bed and clothes. And here it's the sofa, the living room, and it becomes more and more humid. So we have here the bathroom and apple and wine. And so we have a kind of vision of a contemporary apartment that reintroduce this vertical stratification between dry area to humid area into an horizontal modern composition. And I have finished now.